You ever have one of those days when everything changes and you don't even realize it until much later? Yeah, this was one of those. Before I tell you what happened, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Her Revenge Stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love knowing who's out there listening to stories like mine because, trust me, this one's something you won't forget. My name's Diane Mitchell, and for most of my adult life, I've worked in offices. I'm 53, divorced, and I've always believed in keeping my head down, doing good work, and treating people with respect. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, just a steady paycheck and quiet evenings at home with my dog, Bailey. But last Tuesday, that ordinary life of mine got turned upside down by a man who thought no didn't apply to him. I'd been working at Carrington and Rhodes Marketing for almost 3 years. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough, and I liked my small team. I handled client communication and project scheduling, the kind of behind-the-scenes work nobody notices until it goes wrong. My boss, Ethan Carrington, was one of the company's co-owners. Late 40s, smooth talker, always well-dressed, and the kind of man who made people nervous without even raising his voice. When I first started, he barely noticed me, which was fine. I didn't need his attention. But about 6 months ago, that changed. It started with compliments, subtle at first. "You always look so put together, Diane. You're the only one here who keeps me sane." I'd smile politely, thank him, and move on. But over time, those comments grew heavier. "You know, Diane, if I weren't married," he'd say, laughing like it was a joke. Or he'd stand too close when he asked about a project. Little things. Always small enough that if I ever complained, I'd sound paranoid. I told myself I was overreacting. I needed that job. The health insurance alone was worth biting my tongue. Besides, he was my boss, powerful, respected, connected. I didn't want to be that woman who caused drama. But every day, it got harder to ignore. One afternoon, I was working late. Most people had gone home, the office lights dim except for mine and his. I heard footsteps behind me and looked up. Ethan was standing at my desk with 2 glasses of wine. "Thought you could use a break," he said, grinning. "You work too hard." I forced a smile. "Thanks, but I still have a few reports to finish." He set the glasses down anyway. "Just one sip. For morale." I remember how his eyes lingered. Not on my face. I felt my stomach twist. I picked up my coffee mug instead, pretending not to notice. He leaned closer. "You really are something, Diane." That was when I finally said it. "Ethan, please don't." He straightened up, eyes narrowing just a little. "Don't what?" I took a breath. "This. Whatever you think this is. You're my boss. Let's keep it professional." He laughed, but not the easy, charming laugh he used in meetings. This one was sharper. "Of course, Diane. Don't overthink it. I was just being friendly." He walked away, leaving the wine glasses on my desk. I poured them both down the sink. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. But something had changed. His warmth vanished overnight. Suddenly, every email I sent was unclear. Every deadline I met could have been faster. He started CCing other managers on messages about my performance issues. I told my friend in accounting, "He's turning on me." She said, "Diane, just keep your head down. He'll get bored and move on." But that wasn't Ethan's style. By noon, he'd called me into his office. I remember standing outside his glass door, holding my notebook, my heart pounding. When I stepped in, he didn't even look up right away. He just kept typing. Then he said, "Close the door." I did. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and said, "You've been distracted lately. Missing details. I can't have that." "Distracted?" I said. "Ethan, I've hit every target this quarter." He shrugged. "Maybe, but perception matters." Perception. That word stuck in my head like a splinter. He wasn't talking about my work. He was talking about how I'd rejected him, and he was building a paper trail to justify getting rid of me. I wanted to scream, but instead, I sat there and nodded like the obedient employee he expected. Then came the final straw. Around 3 p.m., he called me again, this time in front of everyone. Diane, can you step into my office for a quick word? Every eye in the room turned toward me. I walked in, shut the door, and before I could even sit down, he slid a folder across the desk. HR has approved your termination. Effective immediately. I felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. You're firing me? For what? He didn't even blink. We're restructuring. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. That's what he said. The man who'd been sending me flirty messages at midnight. The man who'd once brushed his hand against mine and whispered, "You deserve someone who appreciates you." I stood up, trembling. You know this isn't about restructuring. It's because I said no to you. He smiled that smug, confident smile. Careful, Diane. That's a dangerous accusation. And just like that, I was unemployed. No warning, no severance, just escorted out by security while my coworkers pretended not to look. I went home that night numb. Bailey wagged his tail when I walked in, and I just sat on the couch staring at the wall. My mind kept replaying everything, the smirks, the comments, the glass of wine, the way he said perception. I wanted to move on. I really did. But every time I opened my email to start applying for jobs, I'd see his old messages sitting there. Dozens of them. Compliments, jokes, little comments that no boss should ever send. I scrolled through them for hours. The more I read, the angrier I got. He'd use company email for all of it. Every inappropriate line, every suggestive comment. All right there, time-stamped and traceable. At first, I thought about deleting them. I didn't want to be the woman who started a scandal. But then I thought about how he'd looked at me when he said, "Careful." That smirk, that confidence, that belief that no one would ever hold him accountable. And that's when a thought came to me. Quiet at first, but it grew louder and louder until it drowned out everything else. What if I didn't go to HR? What if I went to someone who mattered more to him than any company ever could? His wife, Maggie. I'd met her once at a company Christmas party. She was kind, soft-spoken, and clearly adored him. She'd stood by his side all night, smiling while he told stories. She deserved to know who her husband really was. I spent hours drafting the email. Not angry, not dramatic, just facts. I attached the messages, every single one, and wrote, "Mrs. Carrington, I'm sorry to contact you like this. I don't want anything from you. I only think you deserve to know why I no longer work at your husband's company." I hovered over the send button for a long time. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. And then I clicked send. At first, nothing happened. No reply. No call. Just silence. I sat in my living room with the curtains drawn, listening to the clock tick. But around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't her. It was him. "Ethan, you have no idea what you've just done." I stared at the message. My breath caught in my chest. Another one came through seconds later. "Ethan, you'll regret this." I didn't respond. I just turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, my own, this time, and sat back in the quiet. Outside, the street lights flickered on. Bailey laid his head in my lap. For the first time all day, I let myself breathe. Because deep down, I knew something had shifted. He wasn't untouchable anymore. I woke up that morning to sunlight spilling through the curtains and Bailey pawing at the edge of the bed. For a few blissful seconds, I forgot what had happened the day before. Then I saw my phone on the nightstand. 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and a sinking feeling that today was going to be anything but peaceful. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and pressed play. The first voicemail was from Ethan. His voice was tight, controlled, the kind of calm that hides a storm. "Diane, I need you to call me back immediately. What you did was completely out of line. You're jeopardizing more than you understand." The second was angrier. "You've crossed a line, Diane. You think you can ruin people's lives because you're bitter? This isn't over." The third one was quieter, almost pleading. "Please, let's talk. We can fix this. You don't want to make things worse." I deleted them all. Then I opened my email, and there it was. A message from Maggie Carrington. "Diane, thank you for reaching out. I don't know what to say yet, but I've read everything. You were right to tell me. I'm sorry for what you went through. I'll be in touch soon. Just like that, my hand started shaking again. I didn't know what "I'll be in touch soon" meant. Maybe she'd confront him. Maybe she'd pretend nothing happened. I had no idea. But for the first time in months, I felt like the truth wasn't trapped inside my inbox anymore. After that, I tried to focus on normal things: laundry, dishes, taking Bailey for a walk. But small-town silence has a way of feeling loud when you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every car that slowed down outside made my heart race. Every phone buzz made me flinch. Around noon, my friend Carla called. She'd worked with me at the office, one of the few people I'd trusted. "Diane," she whispered. "What did you do?" I froze. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "Ethan's been in his office all morning, door shut, yelling at someone on the phone. HR's in there too. Everyone's talking. He looks furious." I pressed the phone closer. "Did he say anything about me?" "Just that you crossed him, and that he's going to take care of it. Whatever that means." I thanked her, hung up, and sat staring at the table. Take care of it. I knew how men like Ethan operated: charm first, intimidation next. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a new email popped up. From Ethan Carrington, subject: "Urgent Diane, I want to resolve this privately. What you've done is defamatory and could have serious legal consequences. I strongly advise you to withdraw your claims and confirm that you won't contact my family again." Legal consequences. Defamatory. I actually laughed out loud. The man who used company email to flirt with an employee was threatening me with legal action. I took a breath, thought about responding, and then decided not to. Silence would bother him more than anything I could say. The day crept by slowly. I cleaned out my inbox, updated my resume, tried to push away the anxiety sitting heavy in my chest. Around 3 p.m., Carla called again. "Diane, I don't know what's going on, but HR just sent out an internal memo saying there's a temporary leadership change. Ethan's been placed on leave pending review." For a second, I couldn't speak. "He's suspended?" "Looks like it. They didn't say why, but people are guessing." I sank into my chair, my heart pounding. I hadn't expected things to move that fast. Maybe Maggie had already talked to someone. Maybe the company was trying to get ahead of it. Either way, for the first time, Ethan wasn't untouchable. That night, I poured myself another glass of wine and turned on some soft music. Bailey curled up on the couch beside me. The world felt strangely still, like the air after a storm when you're not sure if it's really over. But it wasn't over. Not even close. At 7:42 p.m., there was a knock at my door. 3 short raps, confident, impatient. My stomach tightened. I peeked through the curtain. Ethan, standing on my porch in his press shirt, sleeves rolled up, jaw tight. I froze. He shouldn't have known where I lived, but of course he did. He'd been my boss for 3 years. My address was in every HR file. I opened the door halfway. "You need to leave." He stepped closer, eyes burning. "We need to talk." "No," I said firmly. "We really don't. Diane, you don't understand what you've done." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I told the truth. He let out a bitter laugh. "You think Maggie's going to believe every out-of-context email you sent her? She's already furious. Not at me, at you. She thinks you're some jealous ex-employee trying to destroy her family." That stung. Not because I believed him, but because a part of me feared he might twist the story that way. I took a deep breath. "You used your position to harass me, then fired me when I said no. Everything I sent her was your own words. You can spin it however you want, Ethan, but you did this to yourself." For a moment, he just stared at me, really stared, the mask slipping. His voice dropped low. "You think this makes you some kind of hero? You're nothing. You'll never work in this town again." I met his gaze. "Maybe not, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror." He took a step closer. "You have no idea how powerful I am." That's when I did something that surprised even me. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and said clearly, "Ethan, leave my property." His eyes flickered. "Are you recording me?" "Yes," I said. And if you don't walk away right now, this video will be the next thing your wife and your HR department see. He froze for a moment, then stepped back, that same cold smirk twisting his face. "You'll regret this," he said again, then turned and walked down the steps. I waited until his car disappeared before I locked every door and window. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I uploaded the video to a secure drive, just in case, then texted Carla a simple message. "He came to my house. I have it on video." She called immediately. "Oh my God, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "But he's not done." "Diane," she said carefully, "people are talking. Some clients found out he's on leave, and now the board's involved. They're investigating." I exhaled. Good. Then a pause. "There's more. Maggie came by the office today." That stopped me cold. "What?"
Yeah.
She showed up around noon, walked right past reception and into his office before HR could stop her. I wasn't close enough to hear, but they said she was holding a stack of papers. "Probably your emails." For the first time that day, I smiled, a real smile. Good for her. Carla hesitated. "They said security had to escort Ethan out later. He looked like hell." Whatever she said, it hit hard. After we hung up, I just sat there in the quiet, the sound of Bailey's breathing next to me. The sunset spilled orange light across the living room. It felt surreal, like after months of tension, everything had finally cracked open. But even as I sat there, I knew the story wasn't finished. People like Ethan don't disappear quietly. They fight, claw, twist things until they look innocent again. I wasn't naive enough to think one email to his wife could undo years of his charm and power. Still, I'd done something he never expected. I'd taken control. Later that night, while scrolling through job listings, I got another email notification, this time from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Thank you." I hesitated, then opened it. "Diane, I don't know you personally, but I wanted to say thank you. I used to work for Ethan too. I left quietly after he made things uncomfortable. You're braver than I was. Watching someone finally stand up to him means more than you know."
No signature.
No name. Just that. I stared at it for a long time, my throat tightening. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. By the time I went to bed, I felt lighter. Still anxious, still cautious, but lighter. Maybe justice didn't always come from courts or HR reports. Sometimes it came from small, stubborn acts of truth. Before I drifted off, I thought about something my grandmother used to say. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Ethan had shown me exactly who he was, and now, so had I. When I woke up the next morning, there was rain tapping softly against the windows. Bailey was curled beside me, his head heavy on my arm, and for a moment, everything was calm. Then I reached for my phone and saw the new flood of messages. My name was spreading. Carla had texted first. "It's all over the office. People are talking." Someone leaked the emails. I sat up fast, my heart thudding. Leaked? I opened my inbox. Dozens of messages from former coworkers, some shocked, some supportive, some just curious. There were even a few from women I'd never met, all sharing their own stories about Ethan. I didn't respond to any of them right away. I just scrolled, feeling equal parts validation and dread. So much for handling things quietly. Then another email caught my eye. It wasn't from an employee this time. It was from Maggie Carrington again. "Diane, I don't know how this got out, but I want you to know I didn't share your messages with anyone except HR. Ethan's been removed from the board. They're conducting a formal inquiry. I can't tell you what this means for us yet, but I wanted you to hear it directly from me. I'm sorry you were treated this way." I read it 3 times. Ethan removed from the board. Just days ago, I was being escorted out of that building like a criminal, and now he was the one being pushed out. Still, part of me couldn't relax. People like Ethan always had an angle, a backup plan, a way to make themselves the victim. I made breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, but I could barely eat. I kept thinking about all the ways this could turn. Lawsuits, gossip, reputation damage. I wasn't naive. I knew how easily women like me got painted as troublemakers. By mid-morning, Carla called again. Her voice was hushed, like she was hiding in a hallway. Diane, are you sitting down? I laughed nervously. Should I be?
Probably.
The board just had an emergency meeting. HR presented everything, the emails, your termination file, even the security report about him showing up at your house. They're talking about a full investigation into company misconduct. I leaned back in my chair. They believe me? Looks like it. Apparently, Maggie handed them a statement herself. She's furious. She told them if they don't act, she'll take it public. That image made me pause. Maggie, the quiet, elegant woman I'd met at the Christmas party, standing in front of that boardroom, demanding accountability. For the first time, I felt a strange sort of admiration for her. Carla, I said softly, thank you for keeping me in the loop. She hesitated. You don't deserve what happened. And if you want me to make a statement about how he treated you, I will. I blinked back tears. That means more than you know. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, letting the rain patter on the windows. It felt surreal, like justice was slowly finding its way through the cracks. But then came the next call. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said I should. Hello. Diane. Ethan's voice. Low, strained, not the confident tone I was used to. I almost hung up, but he spoke again. Please, just listen. I said nothing. He exhaled hard. Everything's falling apart. They're suspending my partnership. Maggie's talking about divorce. The board's freezing my accounts. I'm losing everything. A pause. The kind of silence where you could almost hear his pride cracking. You did this, he said finally. I swallowed. No, Ethan. You did this. Do you think you're some kind of hero? His voice rose, a trace of the old arrogance seeping back. You think they'll remember you as the brave whistleblower? They won't. You'll just be another bitter woman who couldn't handle rejection. I stayed quiet for a moment, then said evenly, You really can't help yourself, can you? What's that supposed to mean? Even now, after everything, you still think this is about your ego. It's never crossed your mind that I just wanted it to stop. He didn't answer, just breathing on the other end. Don't call me again, I said softly. We're done. I hung up before he could respond and turned my phone off. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from something else. Relief, maybe. Closure. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. I walked Bailey, watched the rain fade to a drizzle, tried to focus on anything other than my phone. But the world had other plans. By 2 p.m., my story had somehow made its way to local news. Not my name, thank God, but the headline was unmistakable. Marketing executive suspended amid harassment allegations from former employee. They didn't name me, but the article mentioned the leaked emails, the internal investigation, and that the company had confirmed inappropriate communications. The comments section was a mess, half sympathy, half victim blaming. I didn't read too many. I knew better than that. Still, the messages kept coming. Old colleagues apologizing for not noticing. Strangers thanking me for speaking up. Even an old client who said, I always knew something was off about him. It was strange, the mixture of vindication and exhaustion. Like being right didn't feel like winning. Around 4 p.m., I got another text from Carla. They're clearing out his office. HR's boxing everything up. I pictured it. The man who once strutted around that office like he owned the air itself, now reduced to cardboard boxes and whispered gossip. Bailey barked suddenly, breaking my thoughts. I looked out the window and froze. A black car had just pulled up to the curb outside my house. Not Ethan's. Sleeker. A woman stepped out, umbrella, long beige coat, neat hair even in the drizzle. Maggie. I opened the door before she reached the porch. She looked tired but composed. Mrs. Carrington, I said quietly. She shook her head. Please. Call me Maggie. I nodded, stepping aside. Come in. We sat at my kitchen table, the same place I'd written that email to her days before. Bailey sniffed her leg, tail wagging, before settling under the table. She looked around, then at me. I needed to see you face to face. I didn't know what to say, so I just waited. She took a deep breath. I read everything you sent. I confronted him. He lied, of course, but when HR showed me the other reports, she looked down. You weren't the only one. Something in me twisted. Sadness, relief, disgust all at once. I'm sorry, I said softly. You didn't deserve that. Her eyes met mine. Neither did you. We sat in silence for a long time. The rain had started again, gentle against the windows. I don't know what happens next, she said finally. But I wanted you to know, I'm not staying with him. And I told the board everything. They're cooperating with an outside investigation now. It's going to be messy, but it's the right thing. I nodded. I appreciate that, Maggie. Truly. She smiled faintly, tired, but genuine. You did something brave, Diane. Most people would have stayed quiet. I wish I'd known sooner. When she left, she hugged me, just briefly, but it was the kind of hug that said more than words could. After she drove off, I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching the taillights disappear into the gray drizzle. My house felt quieter somehow, but lighter too. That evening, I sat on the couch, Bailey asleep beside me, the TV playing softly in the background. My phone buzzed with a notification, another email, this one from HR. Diane, we wanted to inform you that Mr. Carrington's employment with Carrington and Rhodes has been formally terminated following our investigation. On behalf of the company, we apologize for the circumstances of your dismissal and the behavior you endured. You are entitled to reinstatement or a settlement package. Please let us know your preference. I read it twice, then laughed, the quiet, stunned kind of laugh that comes when you realize you've actually won. 3 days ago, I was humiliated, escorted out like I'd done something wrong. Now, the man who'd built his career on control and intimidation was gone, and I finally had a choice. I looked over at Bailey. What do you think, boy? Should I go back? He thumped his tail once, then rolled over with a groan. Yeah, I murmured. Didn't think so. I didn't go back. The next morning, I drafted a polite, firm reply to HR. Thank you for your message. I will not be returning to Carrington and Rhodes. Please send the settlement documentation to my attorney. I didn't have an attorney yet, but I'd find one. For now, I just needed to reclaim my peace. After I hit send, I stood by the kitchen window watching sunlight break through the gray clouds. The storm had passed overnight, leaving the world washed clean. Bailey pressed his nose against the glass, tail wagging. I smiled. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel trapped. I just felt like me again. Still, the quiet had a strange way of making me restless. After all that chaos, the fear, the confrontation, the adrenaline, stillness almost felt foreign. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize, but the area code was familiar. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Is this Diane Mitchell? Yes. This is Claire Reynolds, from the Daily Chronicle. We're covering the recent developments at Carrington and Rhodes. I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to share your perspective, off the record, if you prefer. I froze. My name hadn't been printed anywhere yet. How did you get my number? I won't disclose that, she said gently, but I can assure you, this isn't about sensationalizing your story. It's about accountability. We've spoken to 3 other women who had similar experiences with Mr. Carrington. They all described the same pattern: flirtation, pressure, retaliation. You were the only one who pushed back publicly. Her words sank in slowly. 3 other women. I swallowed. Are they okay? She hesitated. They've moved on, but none filed complaints. They said they didn't think anyone would believe them. I exhaled. I understand that feeling. I'd never publish your name without consent, Claire continued. But the more voices we include, the stronger the story becomes. You don't owe anyone anything, but if you're open to talking, we'd love to include your perspective, even anonymously. I stared out the window, watching the sunlight glint off the wet pavement. I'd spent so long staying quiet, afraid of what speaking up would cost me. But now, silence didn't feel safe anymore. It felt complicit. Off the record, I said finally. Of course. So I told her. Not everything, not every ugly detail, but enough, the patterns, the late-night messages, the way he smiled when he thought no one could touch him. Claire didn't interrupt. She just listened, typing softly on the other end. When we hung up, she said, "Thank you, Diane. What you did matters more than you know." After the call, I sat for a long time, letting it all settle. Maybe I hadn't just saved myself. Maybe I'd helped others too. Later, I drove into town to run errands. The air smelled fresh, that mix of rain and earth you only get after a storm. I stopped at the little coffee shop near the courthouse, the one with creaky floors and mismatched mugs, and ordered a latte. The barista, a sweet kid named Tessa, smiled as she handed me the cup. "Hey, I saw something about your old company on the news. Crazy stuff, huh?" I forced a casual smile. "Yeah. It's been a week." She nodded. Good for whoever spoke up. People like that guy think they can do whatever they want. Nice to see someone finally stand up. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I sipped my coffee and glanced out the window. The world outside looked normal, but something in me had shifted for good. When I got home, there was a thick envelope in the mailbox, postmarked from Carrington and Rhodes. The settlement documents. It felt heavy in my hands, not just physically but symbolically. I didn't open it right away. I placed it on the kitchen counter and just looked at it, thinking about everything it represented: closure, justice, proof. Around 2 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. My stomach tightened. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Hello." A pause, then a voice I recognized instantly. "It's me, Ethan." I sighed. "What do you want?" "I'm not calling to fight." His voice was lower, defeated. I wanted to apologize." I stayed silent. "I know it doesn't fix anything," he went on. "But Maggie's gone. The house is empty. My reputation's shot. I deserve it, I guess. But I need you to know. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was stupid. Arrogant. Thought I was untouchable." Hearing him admit it, even in that quiet, broken tone, sent a rush of conflicting emotions through me. Pity. Anger. Sadness. "Ethan," I said finally, "you didn't just hurt me. You abused your power. You made people afraid to speak. That's not something a sorry fixes." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You're right." I didn't know if he meant it, but for the first time I didn't care. His guilt wasn't my responsibility. "I hope you learn from it," I said softly. "That's all." He let out a tired laugh. "Maybe one day, you'll forgive me." I took a breath. "Maybe one day you'll earn it." And then I ended the call. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. The rest of the afternoon passed peacefully. I opened the settlement papers, signed them, scanned the pages, and emailed them to the HR address. Then I took Bailey for a walk through the neighborhood. The leaves were starting to turn golden, the air crisp. For the first time in a long time, I noticed how beautiful my street really was: the quiet porches, the smell of someone baking bread, the laughter of kids playing down the block. When we got back, I sat on the porch with a blanket and my coffee, watching the sunset turn the sky orange and pink. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Claire, the journalist. "Just wanted you to know. The story goes live tomorrow." The board confirmed Mr. Carrington's termination and announced new workplace policies. Several women are coming forward. No names mentioned as promised. "Thank you again for your courage." I smiled. A quiet, satisfied kind of smile. I didn't need the world to know my name. I just needed to know I'd made a difference. That night, I cooked dinner, something simple, roasted chicken and vegetables, and poured myself a small glass of wine. As I ate, I thought about how different everything felt from just a few days ago. How one act of truth had unraveled years of deception. But more than that, I thought about all the women who'd sat at their desks like I once did, biting their tongues, second-guessing themselves, afraid no one would believe them. Maybe now they'd think twice before staying silent. Maybe now someone would believe them the first time. Bailey jumped up on the couch beside me, curling into a warm ball. I stroked his fur and whispered, "We're okay now, buddy. We're really okay." The TV was on in the background, low volume, when the anchor's voice caught my attention. In other news, a prominent marketing executive was terminated this week following multiple allegations of misconduct. The company announced new leadership and a renewed commitment to safe workplace culture. No names. No photos. But I didn't need them. I knew. I turned off the TV and just sat there in the quiet. I felt the weight of the past months lift off me, slowly, gently, like dust settling after a storm. Maybe I hadn't planned this revenge. Maybe I hadn't even wanted it at first. But somehow it found me. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in emails, in truth, in courage whispered over coffee with a stranger. Before going to bed, I stepped outside one more time. The air was cool, the sky clear. I looked up at the stars, faint but steady, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The morning after the news aired, I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet, filled with that soft gray light that makes everything look peaceful. Bailey was still asleep at the foot of my bed, one paw twitching as he dreamed. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the streets slowly come alive. People walked their dogs, joggers passed by, and the first school bus of the day stopped at the corner. Life was moving forward, just as it always had. And for once, I wasn't afraid to move with it. My inbox was full. Dozens of unread emails, most from strangers. Women from all over the country. Some were short, just a few sentences. Others were long, emotional stories. Thank you for speaking up. I went through the same thing 10 years ago and never told anyone. You gave me courage. I sat there reading, tears welling up. Every message felt like a hand reaching out in the dark, finding another hand that understood. I'd spent months thinking I was alone in what happened, like I'd somehow invited it, or exaggerated it, or made too much of it. But I wasn't alone. Not even close. After breakfast, I took a walk to the park near my house. The air smelled like wet leaves and morning dew. Children were laughing near the playground, their voices bright against the quiet rustle of the trees. I sat on a bench with my coffee and just watched for a while, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: stillness. A woman in her 50s sat down beside me a few minutes later. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "You're Diane Mitchell, aren't you?" she asked softly. I blinked, surprised. "Yes. I recognized you from the local paper. I work at the courthouse, saw the HR filings come through." She hesitated, then added, "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, touched. "Thank you. That means a lot." She smiled. "You helped more people than you realize." When she left, I sat there a while longer, watching the sunlight filter through the trees. It struck me then how something that began in fear had turned into something much bigger than me. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Claire, the journalist. "Hey, Diane. The story's spreading. It's being shared by advocacy groups, HR professionals, even a few state offices. People are talking about creating new workplace training laws. It's making waves." I smiled faintly. "Good waves, I hope." "The best kind," she said. "And by the way, you're still anonymous. Not one leak. Just the way you wanted." "Thank you, Claire." "You did the hard part," she said. I just wrote it down. After we hung up, I sat with those words for a long time. I did the hard part, because the truth is, it had been hard. Terrifying. Lonely. But it was worth it. Later that afternoon, I decided to do something small for myself, something normal. I went to the salon downtown, the one I hadn't visited since before everything started. The stylist, a cheerful woman named Karen, greeted me with a grin. "Well, look who's back. Been a while, huh?" "Yeah," I laughed. "A long while." She washed my hair, trimmed the ends, and blow-dried it until it shone again. When she turned me toward the mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back, calmer, stronger, softer around the edges but steadier in the eyes. I tipped her extra and walked out feeling lighter than I had in months. Outside, the sky was clear blue, the kind of crisp fall afternoon that made everything look golden. I stopped by a bookstore and wandered through the aisles, running my fingers over the spines of novels and memoirs. I used to love reading before work took over my life. I bought 2 books, one mystery, one memoir, and promised myself I'd make time for them. When I got home, there was another envelope in the mailbox.
Smaller this time.
No company logo, just my name, written in neat handwriting. Inside was a simple note. I'm sorry.
For everything.
M. It took me a second to realize who M was. Maggie.
His wife.
I read the note twice.
No srets, no anger.
Just regret. I wondered what her days looked like now, what truths she was learning to live with. I didn't hate her. I never had. She was another victim in her own way, caught in the storm of his arrogance. I placed the note in a drawer and whispered, I hope you find peace too. The rest of the day passed quietly. I made soup, walked Bailey again, and even called my sister. We hadn't spoken much lately. She'd been worried about me since everything started. Diane, you sound different, she said. Better? I teased. Much better. We talked for nearly an hour. About everything and nothing, childhood memories, funny stories, even plans to visit each other soon. I realized how much I'd missed simple connection. When evening fell, I curled up on the couch with one of the new books. The house felt warm, calm. Bailey lay at my feet, snoring softly. I read until my eyes grew heavy. But before I closed the book, I thought about how different life had become in just a few days. No job. No boss. No fear. Just peace. The quiet kind that doesn't need to be announced. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed one last time. It was Claire again. Thought you'd want to know. The story got picked up by USA Today. They called it a lesson in accountability. It's trending. I laughed softly. You're kidding. Nope.
You made waves, Diane.
Big ones.
I didn't know what to say.
For so long, I'd felt invisible. Now my voice, even an unnamed one, was echoing farther than I ever imagined. After we hung up, I stepped outside to the porch again. The night was cool, the stars faint but steady. I took a deep breath and whispered to the quiet street. We did it. Not I.
We.
Every woman who'd written to me. Every voice that refused to stay silent. Every truth that refused to stay buried. As I stood there, the porch light flickered softly, and I realized something important. Revenge wasn't always about destruction. Sometimes it was about illumination, about letting truth shine where lies once lived. The kind of revenge that didn't burn things down, but built something better in their place. I thought about my old office, about the empty corner desk where I used to sit, staring at my computer screen while a shadow loomed nearby. That place didn't know me anymore. That fear didn't define me anymore. I smiled, finally feeling free. Inside, I poured myself another cup of tea, sat down, and opened my laptop. There were more emails waiting, more stories from women I'd never met. I started replying to them one by one, encouraging them, thanking them, listening. Maybe this was my new purpose. Not marketing campaigns or office politics, but helping others find their voices, one story at a time. The night stretched on, quiet and steady. And as the clock neared midnight, I felt no anger left in me. Just gratitude. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and whispered to Bailey, "Time for bed, boy." He yawned and padded after me. Before I fell asleep, I thought about everything that had happened in one day, from the fear of exposure to the calm of closure. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every second. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud or cruel. It's calm. It's dignified. It's telling your truth and walking away without looking back. And as I drifted to sleep, I realized something I hadn't dared believe in months. I was finally free.